Two voices lighting up your mind. Robbie and Isaac, not hard to find. Cracking jokes, but they know their stuff. In a world that's rough, they call the bluff. Relax, it's just politics tonight.
And welcome for the first time to the Relax, It's Just Politics podcast. I think it's the first episode, I would hope. And my name is Isaac.
My name is Robbie.
And we're just, the only two Democrats in North Carolina,
That's
right?
Yeah, so it's worth to make a podcast about that, honestly.
In the next few days, we'll figure out how many Democrats are actually in North Carolina.
I'm not good about it, but...
Not a strong hope there. But, we just felt like, as two white dudes, it was in our best nature to make a podcast like every white group of people does after this.
That's what the world needs, another white dude podcast.
But
we got to capitalize on that.
The goal is to really just do politics. I've done a lot of long-form politics. I've tried different things. I think the easiest thing to do would just settle down on an actual basic podcast. I don't know if you know about it. I probably talked to you about it. There was a podcast before this called Real Talk. REEL.
Oh yeah, really?
And it was,
is that what you're going for?
and it was fishing while I was doing a podcast.
Okay.
It's a lot harder to bring people to a podcast when you tell them they're going to be in the outside humid and they're going to be fishing the entire time.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
It's a little bit harder to get guests on in that case scenario.
That's cool though. Hey, that's unique. I don't think I've ever heard of anything like that. But
there was a Real Talk before this, but it was a exclusive fishing podcast, but they didn't fish while they did the podcast. It felt like a missed opportunity.
So you do fishing. Is that a hobby of yours?
Sometimes I'm not good at it.
Me neither, but I actually find it really interesting because I've really been into that for a while. So.
I haven't caught anything this year.
Yeah, me neither. I'm the kind of guy that just sits out there in the water and then doesn't catch anything and then just goes home. So. I still find it interesting.
I have a video somewhere of I had like the biggest catfish I've ever seen in my life, and I thought it was funny. I have one. You know what I mean? Like it's called.
Do you saltwater or freshwater?
Fresh, yeah.
Okay.
I want to try fishing in the ocean. That seems really cool.
Yeah, deep sea fishing is what you want. Yeah, that's like gold standard, I think.
But I was gonna catch it, but unfortunately I have a here it is. I can show you. Oh no, that's his. I really thought I was gonna catch it, but my fishing rod.
Came off. Oh my god!
No, it's still on right now. My fishing rod is like a go-go gadget rod. It's the extender one, so it's not made to actually hold anything that big.
Oh my god, that's a monster.
So you see, it was.
Is that River Park North?
Yeah, it is. That's where I go.
Oh wow.
And you see, I'm trying, but anytime I get on the water, the line just starts to give. So I get it almost out, and it falls back in.
That's the worst feeling.
I'm gonna have to put the video in, but it was not a good experience.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That's the worst feeling in the world. But I love going out there and just hoping that something will bite, and just having that like agency of catching something. But I never do. Yeah. Saltwater fishing isn't easier. I say that if you have the impression that like, oh, I want to go out to the pier and just get fish after fish, it's actually really hard. I think I haven't done River Park North in a while, but I've heard catfish
they stock it really well.
They have a lot of catfish there, and they have the feeders and everything too. So if you go there at a time, you can really get something.
Okay, enough fishing.
All right. Yeah.
But we both started in a we'll call it an interesting workplace that neither of us can name because of an NDA.
Nope.
But
was there an NDA?
Yeah, you didn't. Did you not sign one?
I thought I had something. I didn't know it was an NDA.
I just signed an NDA and a form that said I wouldn't sleep with minors.
No.
No, I'm not joking when I say that, by the way, because it's interesting because of someone who worked there. I want to know what I'm signing.
I remember he came in and he was like, "Are you sure you're reading?" You're taking a little too long to read this. Are you reading everything? It's like, yeah.
I want to make sure what I'm signing.
Yeah, I want to make sure what I sign. It was a lot. It was a lot of your time.
Yeah.
But I remember there was a lot. And hey, listen, I'll take Sundays off. You know, if you want.
That was pretty good.
I'll take Sundays off. The hours were good. The boss was abusive, but the hours were great. Yeah, essentially we worked at a pretty kind of, I will say our experience there wasn't super uncommon, unfortunately. I feel like a lot of people have those experiences.
1-star review on Indeed.
With shitty jobs. Yeah, so I'd say it's worth talking about. There's definitely a lot of stories there, but I will say, unfortunately, I think a lot of people will probably relate to that.
Not ironically.
Yeah.
My two biggest that stand out are the whenever I was helping pull down a tree that was being cut down that almost fell on me and me and T. I'll call him T.
Mr. T is good.
Yeah. And then another one is the time I was first. I literally think it was my first or second day of working, and I was in a van with Mr. We'll call him Mr. No, I don't want to. That's a little too close. If I do,
Yeah. How
we'll
about?
call him the Joker because of a letter.
Yeah, but the Joker. But yeah, okay. How about Joker's good? Yeah.
So we'll call him the Joker because he was a Joker. We'll call him that.
Yeah.
But he made jokes in the van that was like very, very, very politically aggravated. Like
Yeah.
something about God, something about immigrants, something about money, and
I heard. That never happened to me, but
you never had any of those?
The thing is, he would do stuff that was so he had a lot of experience working as a retail manager.
Yeah, he was appointed by a board, wasn't he?
Yeah, he had graduated from financial school at.
Oh God, I was like, keep it vague.
Right, yeah, cut that out. God damn it. Okay, cut that out. But he had lots of educational experience, and he also had a lot of experience working in the industry. I think he had worked there for a long time, for like years, and as a manager, or as the boss there. But he would toe the line on a lot of things. But the thing is, he knew how to toe it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
He knew what buttons to press and what buttons not to press, and he knew how to get away with stuff.
Do you remember that one day? I think it was the most dangerous day I've ever worked. Was hanging the chandelier. No, I'll just say it. Actually, fuck it. There's many jobs you can do that. Hanging the chandelier.
No, but there was a lot of that.
Or you were there with me. I was hanging some chandeliers.
Oh yeah, I remember.
And there was a few times there was some close calls.
Did you like almost have one fall on you?
It was me almost falling off that ladder was not the most secure.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of things. Yeah. So I was. I think technically you could call it like sexual harassment.
Oh, there was a lot of that.
Yeah.
Never happened to me, unfortunately.
Well, you left. You got out of there at a good time.
Yeah.
Like you left. You made the smart decision to leave. I was going out of town for a very long time, and I couldn't. If I left, it would be really hard for me to find somewhere that I had to stay for like a month. So I ended up staying until then, but I kind of regret it. I probably shouldn't have. But yeah, I found it. I found it interesting. A lot of the people who worked there, Mr. T, people like that. It was very attractive to like people who worked in construction, people who worked in the trades,
Which politically usually lean one
I found
way.
it really interesting because I never worked with those people before. And I think, I grew up personally in a bubble, fortunately, of Democrats and liberals in the state of North Carolina, which is kind of rare. But I found it interesting working with those people because, someone like me, because I don't have experience working with those people, I have a lot of stereotypes about them. Like, they're not smart maybe, or now you probably have the opposite experience because you live with these people.
Two Republicans.
But like Mr. T, he was a young guy. He was insanely smart. Like he was very technical.
There was a really funny one.
No, he was stupid in a lot of ways, but he was very smart with technical skills. Like he was a very smart. He had a lot of experience in construction. He had probably the most amount of experience that I know from anyone his age. I mean, he was younger than me, but when it came to like politics and social skills, he was very. It seemed like he was very, insular, and very like lacking of perspective.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a big trend for a lot of people working in those industries.
I just remember the one time where me and him were arguing for like 3 hours because he didn't believe that Honduras was in Central America. He thought it was in Europe.
Oh, really?
And his defense was because he had a friend in the military go there, and then
What is he thinking of?
I don't know. He was definitely mixing it with something,
Okay.
and then he ended up going to his Google Watch and asking it, and then it told him, and he was not the happiest with the rest of the shift.
Yeah, and I just think it's a really common thing. Is like they're not like a lot of them are very, very smart, but they just do not have the perspective or the diverse or the experience like
Right there.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know exactly where it is, but I know it's not in Europe. Like that's like kind of a high school understanding of
Geography.
Yeah. But I just feel like a lot of that just comes from not being exposed to diversity, and I feel like that industry is very like self-serving in a way where it's like, hey, I got to think about myself. I got to serve myself. I got to vote for people that are going to stop any sort of selfless a support for other groups of people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's a very good quote about this. I think it's like bigotry never survives first contact. Like
Yeah.
it's very difficult for racist people once they like start actually engaging with the people that they're racist towards.
Yeah.
Their
Yeah.
preconceived notion of like these stereotypes tend to be broken down
Yeah.
very quickly.
Now, I remember he talked about how he used to work with a lot of illegal migrants at his last job. And so I was like, but I can understand if you're only working there, because I don't think he had many friends. And if you're only, I'm not saying that like as an insult.
This sounded like a sneak diss, but yeah, you're good. I
No,
understand.
I actually found it really, I think I learned a lot at there, to be honest, because I never really had been exposed to people like that. I guess maybe that's my own bias and stereotype.
You'll meet some later. No.
Yeah. No. That might sound, that probably sounds unbelievable from your experience.
Oh, yeah.
It's totally different. But yeah, I found that so interesting. He was a really interesting guy.
Yeah, I was used to it. So
Yeah.
I was so ready because like anytime we talked about it, it was always
Right.
there's like a term I use. It's like level 1 like argument. Like
Yeah. Right.
a lot of the time when I argued with him, I was like, these are the first things people say. So I very easily like know the combative response to this. Like
Right.
usually it's very difficult, especially for people who like aren't in this like atmosphere.
Yeah, and I feel like for him, because I know a lot of Republicans that were mature in the sense that, hey, I'm not going to bring up politics at work. You know, they had that understanding. But with him, I think there was a little immaturity there where he
Yeah.
would bring it up all the time. And I think there was a lot of immaturity there for him.
I probably didn't help. I have a rule now where I always tell people, like once people ask me, I'll always be the first. Like I'll be having
Yeah.
conversations with them, but my only rule is I will never bring it up first to like try to like
Yeah.
try to like make sure
I
I'm not.
remember we talked about it a lot, and I think I maybe shouldn't have in that environment around other people who are likely Republican. But I think that bias got to me because like, oh, hey, listen, there's a person that we share common interests with politically. You know, we both watched Destiny, which was crazy. I had never met a single person in the real world that also watches Destiny.
It was a
And
crazy.
I'm embarrassed to kind of admit that to people because he's so rhetorically hyperbolic and has said so many
Oh yeah!
crazy
Imagine
things.
that this was after he was like
No.
taunting the dead firefighter.
Yeah.
On
And even before that, like, honestly, that's not different from a lot of the other stuff he said. There's stuff that matches that in his past that people can like, oh wow, you support that guy? Like, no, I get it. I get why people don't. Honestly, I really don't. I like the content, but I get why people don't. Yeah, I'm not gonna bring it up because I feel like there's validity there in being uncomfortable with some of that rhetoric. So.
So you know a little bit about mine. So we'll start off.
Yeah.
Are you? From what you said, it sounds like you've always been like your environment's always been left leaning politically,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I was fortunate to grow up in I have a family who grew up in an academic field as teachers. And so they
know them.
What's that again?
I said, oh, if only, but I know my parents
Yeah.
are going to listen to this
Yeah.
and I'm going to hear it.
No, I mean, listen, I'm so sorry. I can't even begin to imagine what that's like. Because I always grew up very fortunate in that regard. I guess I have some family who's Republican, but mostly family that's Democrat. I had my dad's side, they were immigrants. He's a first generation immigrant, and he's from Greece. And so that was obviously very biased towards, the left and everything. So I grew up, yeah, exactly. I grew up with a very, very democratic upbringing. And I remember, I was really big into the gaming communities. And I guess like back then.
That can open you up to the alt-right so fast.
Exactly. And so there was a lot, I don't know if it's probably the same to an extent, but I feel like back when I was growing up, it was more simplistic and that was a maybe majority of the culture, of the gaming culture.
Oh yeah, it was get in the kitchen, saying the N-word.
Yeah, saying the N-word, exactly.
Yeah.
Is the troll, Ice Poseidon, like all that stuff.
Yeah.
It was very, very trolling 4chan type shit. Can I curse on this podcast?
Yeah, as long as it's not in the first 20 seconds.
Okay. And so, growing up from a democratic, upbringing, my reaction to that was to move even farther left. Because I'm like, this is kind of weird. This is like not my values. This is not what my parents taught me. And so I remember like during BLM when all that was happening, I was really leaning towards a lot more of the socialist type stuff.
Yep.
And so I would watch like Vaush. I would watch now I don't. but I would watch a lot of those people because that was my reaction to all this kind of crazy rhetoric and all this crazy, right-leaning communities that I was being exposed to. And, people like that, a lot of the people in the, socialist communities are like, especially like Vaush, they've done really good like debates, and
They're very intellectual people.
yeah, they're very
yeah.
rhetorically talented, and a lot of them started off debating conservatives, and that was very satisfying to see. Similar to Destiny, how they
Yeah, it's very easy to get attached to people's beliefs if you see them dunking on someone all the time.
Exactly. And they did a very good job at it. Like Vaush did a really good job early on debating conservatives, similar to Destiny. And I guess additionally, in addition to that, especially during BLM, I find that socialists do a really good job at surface level. They do a very, very good job, at least the ones I know, advocating or doing political advocacy towards progressive ideas. Now, if you go below that, you'll sort of find
once
problems.
you start digging in. Yeah, I remember
once you start digging in, you'll have problems.
I remember the first big debate from BLM. It was listening to Vaush, and it was after the Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yeah.
And Destiny was like, I don't know how it got to this thought process, and I might be mischaracterizing it, but it was somewhere within it. He was like, do you think that people then should, it was about how he ran away after it was done.
Yeah.
And he was like, and he ran to the cops, and Destiny was like, do you think that he should have submitted himself to the mob? And Vaush's answer was like, if you seriously think that the mob's gonna do something to you, then you've done something wrong.
Yeah.
And it was like so devoid of reality, especially with like mob thought process and mob rule.
He said let them attack you.
Yeah. There was that, and then there was the self-defense argument, because I went through the same experience you're going to learn with the whole Vaush and Destiny thing during that time. And it was basically Destiny saying, like, should you sacrifice your autonomy when someone else is coming at you?
Yeah.
And it came into the argument of, like...
Well, you don't know if he's going to kill you or not.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
And it was like, do you think, like, if a rapist tries to attack you, you should, like, submit because you don't know if they're going to hurt you? And like, hearing it's like, wow, Vaush kid has, like... very divorced from reality opinions.
That's where I divorced from it.
Yeah, it's like on the surface it looks like there's very like good thought process.
Yeah.
And then like, but once you start seeing like the left fight with the left on very more naive.
Exactly.
Like, what was the one where it was about pronouns and it was all that, and Vaush was talking about water. You know the old H2O is water, if you know what I'm talking about. That one's an all time where he's arguing with someone.
It's just and especially with the Kyle Rittenhouse stuff, I remember exactly it was like if you're getting raped, that person's not killing you, so let them do it, right? Like you shouldn't take their life because they're not taking your life.
Yeah, it was so devoid from reality.
When they go deeper down, it's very easy for them to present sort of a surface level argument. But when they go deeper down, that's especially with those debates, that's when it really was like, okay, this is really weird. This is like going away from my sort of values and upbringing. And I guess that's when I started splitting off from that part of the leftist sphere.
I think that's like the strength and the weakness of this side, because unironically, like you will have like Sam Cedar debate Destiny debate Vaush. You'll have Vaush debate like you'll have them go on Piers Morgan. You'll have them go on like the
was Vaush on Piers Morgan?
No, but Destiny was. I assume Sam Cedar has one. Piers Morgan. But you see, like these people will challenge each other's beliefs, not just the other side, but like. On the right, like how often do we see Ben Shapiro debate Steven Crowder? How often do we see Nick Fuentes talk to any person on the right, and other than debating a random person on Aiden Ross's stream?
Where is the closest you can get to conflict?
But he left the right very quickly. Now
is he? Did he actually leave the right?
So he is
not Sneeko.
Yeah, he's on his like Muslim arc with like all of that, and the problem is like he's, if you don't know, Sneeko is Haitian.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And if you don't know, recently, from a big Republican figure named Donald Trump, Haitians got targeted. So when Sneeko, who has cultivated a very right-wing audience, went like against that, the entire right wing attacked him.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. Like it was really like, there's an old saying. I don't remember. It would be amazing to say it. And it's like it's like I didn't think the leopard would eat my face off. Is the end of the story.
Okay.
And it's like a person who helps the leopard eat another group. Helps them get rid of another group, and then at some point that group's going to be you. It's like if you like join Republicans on fighting against like transgender people, and you remove that from the conversation. If you go for LGBT people, remove that from the conversation. They're going to split you at some point. If not by hair, if not by skin, if not by eye color, there's going to be a split.
At the end of the day, the whole quote of the enemy of my enemy is my friend only goes so far.
Yeah.
Right. Eventually,
once that enemy's gone,
if you don't have the same values, there's going to be conflict. But I always thought Sneeko really leaned into the very, very traditional conservative Islam.
He went Islam. Yeah, the
But it was
problem
very
is
traditional
American conservative is very Christian. So after they
Okay.
get rid of, so after like the easy arguments of like, well, should a woman do this or
Yeah.
should I
Gotcha.
respect those pronouns?
Okay, so they aligned on that. They aligned on the surface level conservatism, like no anti-women rights and everything. But when they go deeper down, I can
Once
see
it's
the
like,
conflict.
once it's like, well, should a man have 33 wives? Christians will have
Yeah.
a very different view on that than Muslims will
Yeah,
based on
okay.
their different textual books.
Interesting.
But they're built off of like, I think it's called the Abrahamic books. Like they're still built off of the same general
Right.
text. But
Right.
once it comes to policy, which is why personally I don't think
Interesting.
you should mix religion and policy.
Right. Hey, that's
If only our country was built on separation of church and state that people like to
maybe.
forget.
Hopefully, but but yeah, no, I just always saw him. I especially recently with the most recent, years ago, the whole Islam I feel like was very very attached to the left. I don't know if you would agree with that. I feel like maybe that's not true. I always thought that the left was very very protective against Islam. That's what I always thought.
I see what you're
and
saying.
they probably still
Because
are.
like Islamophobia, I feel like the left would be the
Exactly.
first people to protect that, while the
Exactly.
right would be the first people to attack
Yeah, and
that.
Donald Trump was full Islamic, so
Yeah,
obviously
wanted to buzz-
everybody was uniting to protect.
Yeah, Donald
Right.
Trump had that Muslim ban where he wanted to ban majority Muslim countries, and once that got sent back, because Saudi
Yeah.
Arabia was like, "We're boys, what are you doing?"
Right,
And he's saying a new one.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, and so I always thought that, but more recently, I don't know if this has always been a thing. I've always seen the culture of more conservative Islamic ideology coming in more into the mainstream. I don't know if you would agree with that.
I think it happened because of. It's gonna sound really weird, but it happened because of probably Andrew Tate. Because
Oh,
Red Pill
interesting.
was like the peak
Yeah.
of that era, and then
Right.
with Red Pill came Andrew Tate, who was arguably the biggest like cultural figure in the world for a
Right.
decent a period
Yeah,
of time.
I don't know how, but he was.
Yeah, and then from that you had him going into his Muslim arc where he said I think his quote was like he's leaving the red pill. But from
Yeah.
that he still held his very conservative views.
Yeah,
and he
right.
would go onto these podcasts and be with conservatives arguing against women's rights.
Yeah.
Because they can at least agree on that for the most
Yeah.
part. Especially when it comes to like promiscuity and like sexual freedom.
Exactly, yeah.
They'll agree on those. So the right and that side kind of group together, but the problem is some people, as we're seeing, at some point it's going to attack you with Donald
Yeah.
Trump attacking Haitians.
I didn't know that they had that big. I didn't know there was a big conflict there between traditional alt-right in America versus the traditional.
There's a big fight
Islamic.
with the alt-right right now. Even Nick Fuentes is no longer a fan of Trump. I don't know if you've seen that.
Oh really?
Because Trump's such
Really?
Trump's such a big Israel fan.
Yeah.
You know what Nick
that's true.
Fuentes'
But, like,
biggest
who,
thing
but,
is.
Like, who else would he have though?
I
I guess he did dump Nick Fuentes at the White House, didn't he? So that might be a reason.
They had
why.
that dinner one time. Yeah.
They had that dinner, and then he just never. And then I think he dumped him after that.
Yeah,
So that
that's
would make
still
sense.
so crazy thing about Donald Trump.
So is
having
he?
dinner.
I don't know if we want to talk too much about Nick Fuentes, but is he still?
Active?
Has he endorsed any candidate?
No, but he has his most recent stream. He did call the MAGA party a cult party, and he was
Really?
like, "Yeah, it's crazy to see." I was talking with my friends about it. I was like,
That sounds like he's trolling.
If
He's
you
a
can,
big troll. I know that.
it was real. It was, and it's funny because it's like the worst person you know makes a good point. And he was like, I didn't realize this until the garbage situation. He's like, I go outside now and I see people who are Republicans dressing up like trash, like congressmen and this and this and this. And he's like, and it sounds like like we're going down a path of a cult.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, this is what we've thought for the last year.
Yeah.
I'm glad you finally have come to the
But
table.
He's not saying, "Oh, I'm going left." That's not.
Oh, yeah, that's not gonna
the
happen.
opposite. He
That will
is
never
still
happen.
Furthest right.
He still hates Jews, yeah.
to an extent, and that's interesting that he's sort of agreeing
It's horseshoe
on
theory,
leftists
yeah.
on that. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great way to word it. But it's interesting because it feels like the right hasn't found an alternative.
Yeah.
Mainstream alternative. So I don't know who else he would really get behind.
Oh, yeah, no, he won't.
He might just be.
Especially
he
because
just
I
might
think
be
most of
fading
them
into
will
obscurity.
support Israel. Because if Donald Trump supports Israel, the entire right party will support Israel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, he
So,
supports Israel, I'm pretty sure.
Very,
Yeah.
very firm in his belief.
Because that's
in
what he
Israel.
did in his previous administration was very
Yeah,
supportive
he
towards
has said multiple things like their war is like our war on terror, and that if he was in office, he'd just let them finish it.
Israel. Right.
Yeah, those are. He did a speech where he had the American flag on one side and the Israel flag to his right.
Right. Okay.
Like, yeah, he's a very firm believer in the protection of Israel.
Yeah.
And it's really funny, and I've thought about this. This is a tangent, but like if you brought like the most alt-left person and the most alt-right person, and instead of saying the word Jew, you said Zionist, they would agree on 20 of the same
What's
points.
that video? You know that video of the that scale of the alt-right and alt-left sort of agreeing on everything? You know what I'm talking about?
No, but it's pretty believable. Yeah, just basic horseshoe
Oh my
theory.
God,
that
I
like the
gotta find
further
it.
you go, the more closely you align. Yeah, it's
The,
crazy.
let me just show you. You know this video, right? This is pretty. Let me find it. This one. Have you never seen that?
Oh yeah, I've seen
Yeah,
this.
that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's for audio listeners. It's just a video of a person in a shirt that says woke and a person in a shirt that says racist, and they agree on the same views. I think one of the moments is like, I think that we should split up people by race so that they can learn in the way that they're better at,
Yeah, I
and they
think
both
so,
agree
too.
on that.
I think
Yeah.
we should also have segregation.
Yeah.
camps. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Which this podcast is not endorsed.
God. Okay, let's see. Where were we?
We were going through your, again, ADHD, so we're going to be tangenting a lot,
Yes.
but we were going through your political ideology where
Yeah.
we were left off. It was you splitting off from the far left because of Vaush and
I'd say
realizations.
I was leaning towards socialism, and I guess and I'd say I'm gonna be honest. I think that the Destiny content really helped pull me back. I wouldn't say I was a full-on socialist, but I was leaning towards it because man, Vaush was very rhetorically powerful. But eventually, going into the the whole Richard Wolff debates of Destiny, the whole very very hyper specific debates on like what socialism was really kind of sealed the nail in the coffin. That like, man, like what is this?
Yeah, there was
You
a
know?
good point in that debate, I remember, where it's like, it's Richard Wolff and Destiny, and he's like, well, it's Richard Wolff, and he's saying, well, do you think it's fair that like he makes 300 times the amount of like his employees? And Destiny's like, yeah, that's supply and demand. Like, how many people could do Jeff Bezos' job, and how many people could be a warehouse worker?
Right.
And there was a lot of arguments about that, and that's what I remember.
I think the attractive thing for this whole socialism thing is, again, on the surface level, they stand for a lot of
It's the perfect system for a perfect
progressive-
world.
Yeah, true. But at the same time, so like deep down, that's true. It's like that's not realistic. But at the same time, on the surface level, they stand for a lot of attractive progressive policies. They're the ones on the front line, sort of saying, "Hey, listen, $7 an hour, it's kind of crazy. Let's get rid of that." They do a lot of, and in my experience, working with people who I know in Greenville who are socialists, they're the ones on the front line doing a lot of advocacy towards progressive things that I think most Democrats would get behind. But the thing is, when you go deeper behind, like I said before, when you go deeper into
There's
it,
going to be some class
there's going to
divides.
be some divides, and it's the same thing with the whole. It's very similar, I guess, to the whole Andrew Tate versus Christian nationalism.
once you really
you're
dig
going
in.
to start conflicting after that. Yeah, and so I do know a lot, some students here who are, I would say, classified as socialists, and recently they've been kind of going down the whole. I'm not going to vote for Kamala because of Israel,
That
and
burns
that's the
me.
thing where I've been starting to conflict with them. Before we had a lot of we had similar, I guess, enemies and similar interests, but recently I think as I've gotten deeper into those relationships, I've been kind of finding problems with their views. So
Yeah.
But I guess I did, I guess I did, yeah. So to branch off, I branched off from sort of leaning harder left, and I started going more towards traditional, maybe not traditional, but more American liberalism.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where I've just stayed in the last, I don't know, 2-3 years. I say probably the hardest I leaned left was during BLM because everybody was uniting behind that, and it was really hard to get in. It was really easy to get in.
It's really
on
hard
that
to
action.
find a dissenting voice inside of that
Yeah.
because everyone is so strong on one
Everybody's
opinion.
getting in on it, and
Yeah.
you're joining in on them, and you're like, I'm with you, but you don't know who you're with. That's the thing. You don't know exactly who you're with. And a lot of those people, like Vaush, a lot of those people are now supporting Hamas and Hassan, and like, that's driving me crazy. So I know you've been doing a lot of work with that, and I'm really interested in hearing more about that.
Yeah,
but
those are always.
I guess.
I'm trying to figure out where I stand. This is so I'll just start where, because I know you went through it, so I'll start with mine.
Okay.
I grew up very differently from you, from what I've just
Yeah.
heard.
Oh,
I
wow, is it?
grew up in a conservative household from when I was born. For reference, my parents split when I was like,
Okay.
no idea. There's a really funny story where whenever it happened, I'm a little kid. This is kind of sad, but really funny. I cried when it happened, and I remember telling my mother.
I mean, yeah.
I remember telling my mother, "Who's gonna mow the lawn?" as like a way to like defend.
Yeah, but that's sad.
It was
still.
yeah, it's bad, but it's pretty funny now.
Yeah.
It's like that was really the defense we went for is who's gonna mow the lawn. But my father is a very interesting man when you look at like him just from in a vacuum politically, because he went from being straight to
Interesting.
being being gay. He has a fiance now, and now he's bi. And he was a preacher at one point, which a lot of people, you understand, a lot of people have problems with that. Like, he had a lot of problems in his church because of that.
So he has a fiance now who's a man.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
And, I call them, the nickname I have for them is White Dad and Black Dad, because one of them's African American.
And he's conservative.
Very.
That's so interesting.
Whenever I went back to Illinois, I went back on November 6th.
He does not live here.
I was with my stepfather and my mother. Yeah.
Okay.
So I went back in Illinois and I started talking to him, and I was able to like crack through some areas because it's a lot easier coming from me because he didn't see me as very combative.
Yeah,
and I was like,
is your stepfather conservative?
So much worse. We'll get to that.
Okay.
Don't skip ahead.
Okay, sorry.
No, I'm just playing.
I'm telling you.
yeah.
I warned you.
Just wait in here.
All right.
But with him, so I was able to crack it the last time I went to Illinois, like a year ago. But he's very conservative in the sense of, I think it's just how he was, country conservative is what I'd call him, right?
Yeah.
And then my mother, she's more moderate conservative. She has never voted.
Really?
She doesn't believe in elections. And here's a tangent.
Okay.
Whenever that's crazy. Whenever she and my stepfather and me are arguing about the election, because my stepfather doesn't believe in the elections for obvious reasons, I'll be like, it's ironic because you're going to go vote and you don't even believe it's like a just process. I was like, even if you have this, like, if you genuinely think the election is a fraud, why would you be complicit in a fraud?
Yeah.
I was like, at least my mother has like a sound, logical, like thought process she goes by. She doesn't think it's real, doesn't want to vote.
Yeah.
I might disagree, but
she
it's a reasonable.
She actually does not vote.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can see the thought process she went to, and I can see her line of thought perfectly.
Yeah. Well, she's living by her principles.
It's logically sound, yeah. But with my stepfather, it's like, how do you not believe in the election and you're going to go vote? Like, obviously, you think your voice matters
does
then.
not believe in the election.
Oh,
Really?
He doesn't believe in the 2020 election.
Oh,
I bet he believes in the 2016 election.
But he believes in elections principally.
He thinks they're rigged.
Okay. But he still
votes.
Okay.
It's not a sound. Yeah, it's because he lost. It's his. But
interesting.
But so then after they left, I wasn't very political. Actually, I was, but I was like kid political. So I was very Republican and very conservative.
Yeah. So I was really wondering, did you grow up? Did those ideologies impress upon you?
So quickly. There's a really funny. Do you know what iFunny is?
That was like the first TikTok, right?
Kind of. That's close. I can just pull it up now because I still have it. It's just an app that's like, it's just memes.
Oh, okay.
And you just swipe through them. That's all it is. Okay.
Right. Okay.
I have a comment that I saved, and it's on my phone
From like
somewhere.
2011.
It's like 2016, 2015, 2014, and it's me commenting on some Donald Trump posts, and I'm like, it's just some Democrats getting butthurt.
Really?
Yeah. So obviously, I was very. I remember a story. There's an art teacher who didn't.
You need to redefine yourself.
There was an art teacher who didn't like me in high school, freshman year, because I was still Republican at this time. And I would argue with him back and forth about Trump. And I would defend Trump.
Really?
2016.
Interesting.
Because he would be like, I think that I think both of our logics were sound in the time. Because he
was a different guy back then.
His logic was, I'm not going to vote for someone who, like, there's 20 allegations against. And my response was, in the legal system, you should never assume someone's guilty until well, as we know now, he was found guilty.
Right.
So I think on both sides there was a lot of logical thought processes. It's just we were so early on in our Trump era.
Yeah, there was a lot less underground.
Yeah. So he would be like, if 5 women, like, would you let your daughter in a room with 5 women? In a room with a guy where 5 women have claimed that sexually assaulted him. And I was like, no, but I also wouldn't think that he did it off of hand.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But I can understand.
I understand both sides.
I would
easily.
not vote for him.
Yeah.
I would not take that risk of voting for president, but I can understand not saying, oh, you're guilty. Yeah.
But I don't remember. I think the switch genuinely just happened when I started thinking for myself, unironically.
Yeah.
Because I don't have like a single event where I was like, now I'm a Democrat. I just remember thinking of like, I don't know the thought process or the name for it, but there's like it's like, if I was going to give someone advice, like if someone come to me and they're like, hey, what can I do to better my life? I'd be like, study. I'd be like, get yourself activities to do. Focus on something, right?
Yeah.
It's very difficult for people with ADHD, as you know. But if someone asked me, like, do you think if this person fails, it's because he didn't study or he didn't do all these things? I'd be like, No, I think a lot of your output in life is already determined when you're born. I think the class you're born in is going to be the class you die in. I think because just that's the way the world works. Like economics shows that like it's very difficult to punch above your like class. It's very difficult to get out, right? Especially if you're poor, if you're born in a poor neighborhood with poor education, it's going to be very difficult for you to get a high access to level of education, right?
Yeah.
So when I started realizing stuff like that, and I started agreeing with that, I was like, well, then it makes sense to like for school funding. I was big on that.
Yeah.
I was big on like I think the number one precursor is AC, but the second for success in school, it's AC, and then it's free lunches.
Yeah.
And Illinois did end up passing it, I think junior or sophomore year. That was a big thing people were fighting on, and that kind of split me from the normal Republicans. I was like, you guys don't think there should be free food for kids in school?
Yeah.
Apparently, you guys don't have that here, do you?
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, we do. We do. I'm no longer we though. I'm now North Carolinian, and I remember being like, it's crazy that you guys don't think we should give kids like free food if we can see empirically that this improves their outcomes. You don't think that we should do this? And it's like, well, we don't have the money. And that started off like a very nihilistic.
Why don't you have the money, right?
Yeah, it's like a very nihilistic look at like a lot of things. Like we can't do it because we don't have money. I feel like it's the number one thing I hear.
Yeah.
I remember arguing with my stepfather. I'm skipping ahead a little, and it was like 2 weeks ago, and we're in a drive-through, and he's like, I don't think we should give money to immigrants. And I was like, yeah, but you think that? He's like, because we need the money. I was like, you don't think that because we need the money? You think that because you just don't like immigrants? He's like, no, we need the money. We don't have a lot of money here. I was like, do you think if we took the money from that? I was like, where would you want us to use it? And he didn't have an answer, so I was like, do you think that we should use it to like make a social welfare system? No. Do you think we should like make like a single payer healthcare system like that the government controls? No. Do you think that we should have like a social safety net for people when they lose their jobs? No. I was like, okay, so you don't agree in giving money to people at all. That's your problem. You don't not like immigrants. You just don't like the government spending money.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I can understand that output, but it's like you have to have solutions in. Like if you don't think that we should give, if you don't think the federal government should be giving schools money for that, do you think states governments should? Well, yes. Okay. On what though? Well, they definitely shouldn't. You should be using them on Bibles. Isn't that Nebraska now? Where schools have them in.
Yeah.
Does Nebraska even have?
Party populism now is now like spend money on stuff that we want.
Yeah, and it's like, unironically, it's like imagine Jesus Christ.
A lot of government involvement now. Therefore, a lot of the authoritarian kind.
I'm pretty agnostic when it comes to religion, but imagine Jesus Christ coming down and being like, I'm glad you gave children my book instead of giving them food. That sounds like really, the man who gave his clothes off of his back, that sounds like something he'd be for. Yeah. So
go ahead.
Yeah, so that was that. And then
do you think that remember you talking about how you had that basic sort of thought process of like, oh, we should help people. Oh, people deserve a chance. Separate from the actual like, oh, moving on into like a democratic sort of ideology, like that basic sort of feeling. Do you think your parents had that, and that's where you got that from, or do you think you developed that yourself?
I think that had to be developed by like obviously nature versus nurture, but I think there was definitely some interactions that caused that.
Okay.
I'm trying to think about my parents being like giving people. I'm trying to think
because it feels like you had these values, and then you saw the Republican Party was totally not acting on them, and that's how you split off.
Yeah, when I think about my parents, I think they're pretty nice and giving people, and I think they would help people. I think that they somewhere lost that view, especially when it comes to like government.
That's been very recent.
Yeah,
so that would make sense.
I think that
when traditional conservatives like with McCain and Romney.
I assume they've been Republican their entire life.
Well, that was very different. There was a lot of that I can understand that if they fall into the MAGA, bubble.
Yeah. I don't think so. This would have had to been after. I wasn't a big Hillary fan, I will say.
Yeah,
I remember, but when Joe Biden came around, did my go, okay. I think this was the first person where I was like, this seems like a good person to put in office. Like, he has experience. I don't know if you know this. The Obama's administration, they didn't have gay marriage as a public platform until Joe Biden forced it to be one.
Whoa.
You would think, considering conservatives think that.
Because he was not super left leaning back then. He was very kind of like he was still a liberal.
But he was old man.
He was an old man, and he was very kind of more leaning towards center.
There's that old newspaper article of him saying he doesn't want schools to become a racial jungle.
Yes, yeah. He had a lot of cultural conservatism history.
Yeah.
Right? So that makes sense. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and it's funny now because conservatives think that Obama's in a secretly gay relationship with a trans man.
Right.
Yeah, so it's funny that Joe Biden was the person to make that. But I think so. It would have had to have been around 2017, 2018, 2019. And I think the thing I noticed is I think that if you believe in, do you know, like, it's a philosophical school of thought. Do you know what materialism is, or materialist? I think it's
Yeah,
materialism.
like material, like
Everything you can see and
everything you
experience
touch
is measurable.
And experience and get and accumulate.
Yeah, everything is measurable. There isn't like luck. There isn't like fate. I think if you believe in certain things like that, I think you just lean left. And I've always, like, since I was never religious, I've never thought of anything beyond like reach.
Interesting.
So-
Your parents religious?
My father's very religious.
Okay.
My mother and my stepfather, I don't think so.
Okay.
My grandmother's very.
Okay.
She believes in like Wendigos though, so I don't know how that lines up.
Okay.
She's very, very, very. She's a big Bigfoot.
Let's have her on. Yeah.
But I remember, unless you want to, actually, it could be fun if we could listen to Bigfoot stories for 3 hours.
That would be so
There was one
sick.
time where she texted our family group chat and was like, "Was Mark outside my window at 6 a.m. or was that Bigfoot?" Mark's my stepfather, and it was like, okay.
Oh my god.
But I think that when you start leaning towards that, like you think everything can be measured, or you think everything has like some empirical sense to
Yeah.
be made of
Would you
it,
say,
you're
like,
pretty
would you-
lean left.
Yeah. Would you call that materialism or objectivism or
Yeah, I'm not big on philosophy. I try to stay out of those debates. They hurt my head after a while.
same? Yeah.
Yeah.
Utilitarianism. Would that be it?
Utilitarianism just means like you use every view you have is like from utility. So like if you had to kill one person to save 20,
Okay,
that would
okay.
be utilitarianism.
Yeah. Well, I think gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's personally what logically I think helps turn me off from a lot of the. I think a lot of the figures that I'm probably rambling here, but a lot of people like Destiny and a lot of those online figures that I've been watching. That's really that sort of logical sort of less emotional arguments. I think really helped convince me on a lot of the current stuff that I believe now. But I think sorry, I'm rambling. Go on. Keep going. What you were saying.
Yeah, no, you're extremely right. Like, yeah, I don't lean towards emotional like responses. I'm not big on those. So like, yeah, whenever you see like one side seems to be backed up by data, and even in 2017 that was the case, but now it's like if I bring up any data to a Republican, now it's just not even real.
Yeah.
Like if I try to tell someone like border crossings are lower now than they were under Trump,
Yeah.
well, who's saying that? It's like the ICE, the people who run the border. I don't believe them. They're the federal government. I believe Tucker Carlson on his Twitter news show, and it's like, okay,
you need evidence for the most. You need to provide evidence and dive into every single little thing to the point where I actually don't know if that's possible to engage with that. I don't know if you have, but it seems like the hardest
mind-numbing.
thing.
It's
because
mind-numbing.
like, okay, here's evidence here. This person did that. You have to back up literally everything you say. Literally every word you say, you need to back up, or else they're gonna say that didn't happen. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. I can pick and choose what didn't happen based off of my own feelings.
Yeah, and it's funny because like this is so I would say like I'll bring it up with an argument, and I'll go back to the example I gave. Like border crossings are lower now. They won't support that. They'll never take that number. Yeah. But when ICE comes out and said there's 300 undocumented murderers and criminals in the country, do they love using that number from ICE? It's like you pick and choose what numbers you use.
What drives me crazy is I read the bipartisan border bill. That thing drives me crazy because it seems like it would have solved all the issues that we were dealing with.
I just argued about this like
Did you actually?
2 days ago.
I read the entire thing, and I remember actually this might have come up with Mr. T at our old job. He was really on top of that, and that's how remember how I was talking about him and Joker were having that disagreement, and they got into a fight, and that's like the day before he was fired. Remember I was telling you about that?
Yeah.
That's how that came up, and I remember thinking, okay, let me look into this. I looked into it. I read the bipartisan border bill. It did literally everything
they wanted. It was written by a Republican, to be clear.
Yes, but the Democrats, went in on it
because they agreed it was a good bill. Yeah,
and they kind of did. So I think that's like more effort because I think the whole Republican Party pulled back. Like they all.
They got Trump. Right. So Mitch McConnell came on Fox News and talked about this. They got the call from Trump to kill that bill.
Yes.
So
all Republicans withdrew.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think majority. I would assume
withdrew.
some. I bet Mitt Romney didn't. Mitt Romney's pretty good about being a decent human
He's
being.
sort of become a McCain of the.
Right. But what I've noticed was, so initially it was proposed the first time with funding for Israel and funding for Ukraine.
Right. It was
and it was not taken.
Yeah.
So then they were like, okay. And then people went on Fox News, we didn't sign this bill not because the border's not an issue, but because we didn't want to send money to Ukraine and Israel. So the Democrats were like, okay, what about just the border?
Yeah.
Just put it up, declined.
Yeah, I think it went back and forth a couple of times, and they were like, okay, we're introducing the bill with Ukraine and Israel. Can we vote for that because we have incentive too? No. Hey, listen, we'll vote for it. Republicans were like, hey, listen, we'll vote for it if you tie it with the border bill.
Oh, yeah, that's all it is now.
And they did that, and they said, no, never mind, we're not doing it.
This is
and
all
so
it
they
is
all
now.
withdrew, and I feel like Democrats, whenever I hear these ads of like, by the way, North Carolina is I feel the most bombarded I have ever been in my entire life with the advertisements here. This
Well, we have a Republican governor who's
Yeah.
probably one of a kind. Yeah, that Republican candidate, Mark Phillips.
Mark Robinson.
Mark Robinson.
Yeah.
Who's Mark Phillips? Mark Phillips is RDC. He's a YouTuber. My bad. My bad.
I say probably like 75% of the ads. By the way, I'm ADHDing again. Are political ads right now.
Oh, yeah. That's
It's
what it always
actually-
is.
if you live in a swing state, I empathize with you so freaking much. Oh my god.
Oh my yeah. I try to watch Disney Plus. I have ads on my Disney Plus. Every single one is
Yeah.
Kamala Harris thinks
Oh
this,
my
this,
god,
and this.
she's dumping so much money into the campaign. I spent like 2 days working for remember that no, I can say it. I
Yeah,
can say
you
it.
didn't sign NDA.
The canvassing operation. 2 days, I made like $700.
Nice.
It was crazy.
Yep.
Okay, I've gone off the rails again.
No, you're good.
What were we saying? God dang it. What was I saying? Oh yeah, the bipartisan border bill.
Yeah.
I feel like just that by itself, like Democrats have done so much more for that situation than Republicans have in 2024. Like, there's no argument there for Republicans. I don't feel like I feel that you could say
There's bad faith arguments, and I can give you all of them.
I feel like you could say, hey, Republicans are more dispositioned to, if they were in office, to do more for the border because they're so obsessed with it. But I feel like Democrats have done everything they could have done this year, and Republicans just because of just how unfunctionable they are, just couldn't go along with
Yeah.
it, and you can only blame them for it.
I can give you I'll give you three stalemate arguments that I've heard. The first one is that this border bill would allow, and I'll explain to you why they're stupid after. The first one I've heard is that this would allow 300,000 people to come in a day before
Yeah.
the border could be shut
No,
down.
I
The
know
reason
that.
that's really stupid is because that's not what it says.
No.
It says that once that limit is reached, the president has the executive power to close the border itself. Not
Yeah.
that that's the limit on how many people can come in a day. It's saying if that number ever gets exceeded, then it can be
And those
closed.
people aren't even coming in; they're being detained. That's what they're being.
Yeah.
The whole bill basically said, "Hey, these people are coming in. We're putting them into the asylum program, and we're processing them there." It ended the catch and release. No,
Yep.
They're not going into America waiting for their court date.
180 days.
They're all in the asylum process, and that doesn't mean they're coming in. They can get kicked out once they're decided, right? So just because they're in the asylum system, that's just the legal immigration system, right? Unless you want to go after, I feel like the only argument that Republicans go into on top of that you have to go down, the only line of argument that you can go down at that point is, listen, legal immigration is bad. That's what we need to
There's
go
that
to.
Owens, there's that Destiny, and I forgot his name. It's like Owens something. He was arrested at January 6th, and they're having the debate.
really?
And no, it wasn't
I
him.
feel
It
like
was a
half the
different
guys
person.
he's talked to have been arrested.
It
so
wasn't.
far.
It wasn't him. It was a different person, and they were arguing. And he's like, "Don't just you're." He's like, "You're just lying. Don't say
Yeah.
you're against illegal immigration. You're just against all immigration."
Yeah,
And he was
exactly.
Like,
The issue is all immigration
Yeah.
because that whole situation boils down to legal immigration because
Yeah.
they're all those people are coming into the legal immigration system. They're not illegal immigrants flooding the country. They would be coming into the legal immigration
Yeah,
system.
I remember I tried to have this argument with my mother, but they just can't. Sorry, they just can't fathom the other side. And I'm like, you understand that? Like, you think? I was like, do you think people are coming in illegally? And it's like, yes. And I was like, okay. When JD Vance is on the debate stage and he's saying it's so easy for people to come in legally because all they have to do is apply for asylum on an app. You think people aren't doing that then?
Yeah.
If it's that easy, you don't think they're doing that when
Yeah.
all they have to do is apply for asylum, they get it because that is how it's set up right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
You think they'd rather come in illegally and have to have way more difficulties rather
Yeah.
than getting 180 days till your first court case?
Yeah.
Getting, I think they even get money, don't they, because they're coming in from asylum? Like, that's a big Republican
Yeah.
talking point. Like, these are the way bigger issues. And it's just like, if you think it's only illegal immigration, there's no other solution than to close the border. And
Yeah.
it's divorced from reality.
But basically, the whole thing boils down to, if you go really deep into it, it all boils down to close the border, no legal immigration. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah,
If you go all the way down that argument, that's what it boils down to. Is that's going to be the position that they have.
Yeah, I remember I had a debate on Twitch where I was talking about this, and I was like, "Well, why are you against immigration?" And the idea was like, immigrants coming to the country are here to vote like illegally, and I was like, "So what about people who come here legally and they vote here legally?"
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, "Is that going to be an issue for you?" It's like, "No," and I was like, "You agree that like almost all people who come to America are probably gonna be leaning left, right? Like no one from like I understand you're afraid about Mexico
Yeah.
and you're afraid about Haiti. No one's gonna come from fucking Norway or Denmark
Yeah.
and vote for Trump.
Yeah.
Right? No one's gonna come from UK or from France or from
Yeah.
Germany and be like, I really like Trump. Like Trump's approval in the UK and in the EU was the lowest we've had
yeah.
for a presidential candidate in a long time.
Well, they kind of asked for it, right? They've
Yeah.
been the most isolationist,
Anti-EU, NATO.
But it
Yeah.
makes sense, you know. You can't. Yeah.
So it's like you're not like it's not like these people are coming into our country to vote Democrat, but they are going to, and that's not
Yeah.
the problem with the Democratic
Yeah.
Party. It's a problem with the Republican Party. When
Right,
you demonize
exactly.
immigration,
Yeah.
of course people are going to come in and probably be against you if they
Yeah.
themselves are
Yeah.
siblings of immigrants, parents of immigrants, sons of immigrants. Like that's what America was. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
yeah, exactly. And you basically, that's forcing them to admit that their problem is with legal immigrants
Yeah.
coming in. Illegal immigrants can't vote. That's not a thing. I don't even think there's an ability for them to vote. Now, I think there may be some elections in some counties where they can vote
There's
for,
some local elections,
for
yeah.
local elections, but it's literally impossible for them to do up to vote for any other election.
I remember talking with my stepfather about this, and I was like, "Do you think that?" He was like, "Do you think?" Because he started it, and he was like, "Do you think it should be voter ID?" I was like, "I'd be perfectly fine behind voter ID if it was given without a cost."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Well, we couldn't produce it for free." I was like, "Yeah, but if you want to like put in a guardrail, I think that guardrail should be accessible
And
for
it's gonna-
all people."
Yeah, and it's going to disincentivize a lot of people.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people. I ran into like a handful of people when I was doing canvassing who actually didn't have IDs.
Yep.
And they're like, "Oh, I need to register. Like, I don't have an ID on me. Can I still do it?" It's like, "Yeah, you need to register. You can vote provisionally, but it's going to be a lot easier if you have an ID." I think in North Carolina, you can still vote if you don't have an ID. It's just a little bit harder. You can vote provisionally. And if you have, under some exceptions, you can still vote, but for the most part, I think you do need an ID. There are some exceptions where you can't vote.
There's a fun fact. North Carolina recently had a voter ID bill that was struck down in North Carolina Supreme Court because it was, and the way the judge described it was racially like it was magnetically it's some word that meant specifically.
Microscopically?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was divided between racial forms of identification. So when it came to like if black people primarily use these forms of identification, those weren't included in the ways to identify yourself to vote.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and it was really interesting to look at. And it's like, well, why do you think Republicans seem to want to do that? It's like,
Yeah.
there's probably some,
Yeah, our state is probably now. I'm not that educated. I don't know too much state by state. I think our state is the worst at disparaging people in that regard when it comes to especially gerrymandering. I think we are the
Oh,
worst
I've been told.
gerrymandering.
It's the first thing I
in
got told when I
North
moved
Carolina
here.
Ever.
Yep.
And I think that might be the reason why we'll never go blue.
I was told that when I first
I don't
moved
know.
here. It was one of the things I was learning about. I was like, what can you tell me about? I was like, what are policies or like
Yeah.
issues in North Carolina
Yeah.
that are specific to here? And someone was like, yeah, the gerrymandering is horrible.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
It's really bad. And the thing is, like when it comes to popular vote, we're mostly all blue. We vote Democratic governors all
Every
the
single
time.
time, yeah.
We have a Democratic governor right now. Mark
Yeah.
Robinson's probably going to lose.
Oh, he's
definitely.
I think the last poll was like
Attorney
12
General is
points
almost
different.
always blue. All the popular vote offices are all blue, but we almost go red. As recently, maybe Obama went blue.
Yep, 2008.
But almost all of the ever since then, almost all. Sorry,
You're good.
ADHD. Almost all of the presidential elections have gone red just because, and I don't even know if it's even possible to divide from that now just because of the gerrymandering. I'd actually, if I had to say what the primary fault of us going red was, I think there's a really good chance that it's just because of how we're districted. I think that could just be the main reason, to be honest with you.
No.
I'm gonna be so ashamed that
I'm just staring at PA. I'm staring at PA the entire night.
I am too.
It
but
won't be done until
I'm
the
so
day after.
attached. I'm gonna be so ashamed if North Carolina goes red. I know we don't need North Carolina, but I'm just gonna be so ashamed and mad at this freaking state if we go red again. It seems like we might though.
Right now,
We're
it's
2 points behind, I think, in North Carolina.
if Donald Trump wins Nevada and he wins Georgia and North Carolina, he would be at 268. And if
Heck,
if Kamala won Wisconsin and Michigan, she would be at like 252. And the only state left would be Pennsylvania, which would be 19, and whoever wins it would be. It's gonna come down to.
Dude, they're supposed to be blue.
It's gonna come down to Pennsylvania.
They're New England, man.
The most recent poll came out in pretty good favor. Did you see the Iowa poll? I
2
haven't
points?
talked about that.
That's crazy.
The one the one where Kamala's winning in Pennsylvania.
That's crazy.
But from the most accurate pollster in Pennsylvania, not Pennsylvania, sorry, Iowa. The most accurate pollster in Iowa has Kamala leading 2 points.
I'm So a big thing on YouTube now is a lot of people are taking advantage of this election prediction stuff, and there's so many just third-party, uneducated people trying to predict Trump's win. And
Poly market.
Right now, I hate that.
Yeah, my stepfather uses it all the time. He's like, "Do you see it's at like 69%?"
Yeah.
I was like,
Well,
"That's from people betting."
I lost a lot of money on it. So basically,
Allegedly.
I lost a lot of money.
You can't legally vote in the election in the United States.
Allegedly. Predict it. Oh no, I did not predict it. So that's legal. Predict it's legal. Is the one exception. I didn't do it on Play Market.
Okay. And if you ever do, it'd be allegedly, yeah.
Yeah. Because I think Predict It is technically a university exception that you're allowed to do. But I was so certain Biden was going to stay in because
I did the same thing. I did the same thing.
It was. Wait, did you bet or did you?
I bet that he'd be the Democratic nominee.
Yeah.
And I lost.
No, I lost that. I actually put it on. I put it on him. I put over Trump. I didn't do the Democratic nominee.
I was like, it's a lock. No one else is going to be it.
Hundreds of dollars on him.
2 weeks later, he dropped out.
The thing is, it was so unprecedented. It never happened before. It was so unprecedented, not in the sense that a president hasn't resigned before in that way, but at that stage of the election, that has never happened. At that
especially
stage,
middle of the campaign.
end of the campaign almost.
Yeah.
That had never happened before. That late on into the campaign.
I don't think he should have. I'm still a Joe Biden pilled.
I think he is the best president that. I'm kind of like leaning more into him than I am Obama, honestly. Now again, I don't know how much you can attribute.
Well, because you probably also weren't mostly informed during Obama, so you probably didn't see his.
And also, I don't know. Like the world was different back then. I don't know how much of those decisions would have been made differently. Like the Ukraine thing, unprecedented. We didn't know how to deal with that. We made a mistake. I don't know if Joe Biden would have done things differently. There was a lot of things that were so unprecedented. The demographics were different back then. The way people felt was different back then. I just don't know how fair it is to compare those administrations. But I'm like really happy with how Biden.
Yeah, you have to remember that it's funny to say this, but like a Democrat hasn't come into office on their own and since before Obama. Because Obama came in on the 2007 housing crisis.
Right.
The housing collapse. He had to come in on that and bring us back from that.
Exactly.
Bring us back to the greatest economy we've ever had.
Yeah.
Stock market growth for, the last 36 months of his presidency. Then you had Donald Trump come in and mishandle COVID.
Yeah.
So Biden had to come in and bring us back to the highest growth in the G7, the lowest when it comes to inflation.
Yeah.
It's weird that we don't get to see them come in and have to do stuff that they want to do. Think about it. The biggest thing Joe Biden gets hits for is the Afghanistan pullout. Mm-hmm. Who negotiated that deal? Who kicked the can down the road?
Donald Trump. Even though it was so bad,
we had to do it. Yeah, at some point.
Even if it was bad, even if it was going to be horrible inevitably, let's just say it was inevitable. Maybe it wasn't. Let's just say it wasn't an inevitable collapse like that. Is it better to be? By the way, I could go into that, the whole Taliban thing, which is driving me crazy.
How we didn't negotiate with the Afghan government. How Donald Trump drew us down to historic lows.
Honestly, I feel like even what we saw, isn't that better than just staying there forever?
It's funny now because now the right is to champion the anti-war rhetoric. You look at the Democrats have Dick Cheney on their side, the person who got us in the Middle East.
Oh my God, it's crazy.
Yeah, and
I don't think the Republican Party will ever come back. That used to be the opposite of the Republican Party. Was foreign interventionism.
I mean,
dude, it was so crazy how that's flipped in the past couple of years.
Did you ever think you'd see a camo hat and it'd be a Democrat?
Oh my God, we've reclaimed patriotism.
I dropped my hat onto my mic and I saw it spike.
Excuse me. We've reclaimed patriotism. I feel like now when I see an American flag, I'm like, okay, there's a good chance this guy's like a liberal patriot.
Because now all of the people who are MAGA patriots don't fly American flags; they fly Trump flags.
Exactly, or
Confederate
flags. By the way, I don't know if you've seen any of those in North Carolina.
I've seen a few.
Yeah,
especially some on the back of trucks.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you go outside of the city, you can
go
see
to
a lot of them. There's this one guy who's been paying $10,000 every 5 months to keep this giant Confederate board up.
He gets fined. Yeah,
I can't deal. But yeah, I feel like we've reclaimed patriotism, and it's just crazy how quickly those things flip. Democrats used to be anti-foreign intervention,
everything,
anti-everything intervention,
anti-vaccine,
drawdown the military. Was the whole thing was hey, listen, we're spending so much money on military. The left was we gotta take all that money from the military, put it into healthcare, put it into all this stuff, and now it's flipped. Now sorry, go ahead.
The problem with that is I completely agree with you, but now if you ask them where should we, because at least with the left, the idea was to take money from military spending and use it on American citizens.
Right.
The right championed the same rhetoric, but when you ask a liberal what they wanted that money on, they would have said a social safety net, social welfare, healthcare.
Exactly.
But when you ask a Republican what we'd use that on, they have no fucking idea.
Nothing. You don't want to use it on anything.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how so involved the right was with foreign intervention and military spending to protect America's interests, maybe even to a negative extent like Iraq, or maybe even to a negative extent when it comes to like, to an extent maybe imperialism, like with Dick Cheney. Like I don't know.
I agree. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
pretty
like
much
Dick Cheney was kind of like, I don't know. Have you seen Vice?
like the platform.
The movie with Christian Bale.
No.
He basically put on. By the way, he basically put on. You know how Christian Bale's like super
Good at transforming his body?
actor? He put on like 250 pounds to play
Dick
Dick Cheney, and it was really good. It was actually a really fun movie. I would recommend it. But that whole thing was like, now again, this is a movie, but he really like. I didn't know how much of like imperialist this guy was. He was like conquering. Listen, we gotta conquer all these countries and secure our place as an empire. But I feel like that's definitely where it branches off is imperialism versus protecting our allies, right? Those are the two sides where I feel like it branches
There's
off.
even a bigger one, I feel like, with anti-establishment and establishment. Republicans were the big establishment party, and now they're so anti-establishment.
Yeah. The left was very anti-establishment.
Yeah, that's why I said earlier. I said anti-vax. That was the left thing.
Yeah, like civil rights
Hippies,
movement.
yeah.
It was very, very civil rights movement, and now we've gone full establishment. I don't think the Republican Party's ever going back. I can't. Yeah, it's insane to say that I wish it would, but I don't think it ever will.
Yeah, it's like, it's so crazy. Because, like, I think about, like, the old stereotypical hippie. Wouldn't get vaccinated. We talk about military conspiracy theories. JFK was shot by the government. Martin Luther King shot.
That Russell guy? What's his name?
The rapist?
Maybe. Probably. The Joe Rogan, what's his name? Russell
Brand?
That's the sort of leftist that I would always think of.
Let me see a picture of him. I think I know exactly what you're talking about. He was a rapist. And let me make sure we're talking about the right person before I call him a rapist.
No, this guy.
Yeah, so he was a rapist, and he got charged with it. And after it, his audience,
actually?
yes.
Well, he's on full MAGA now.
So the audience turned on him, and when he was attacked by that, he instantly went full Christian, and so he switched because that was the only side that would support him.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So he's been with Jordan Peterson.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw he's basically embraced the whole MAGA movement, embraced the whole, He's sort of Frankensteined the very, very traditional sort of leftist values, I feel like, into the whole MAGA movement, I feel like. But basically, like we talked about, isolationism, drawdown military, very much sort of anti-vax, like you would say, that it used to be. But I feel like he's like Frankenstein a lot of that stuff and had just thrown it into the new MAGA ideology. And I don't know much about the whole rapist thing, but that wouldn't surprise me.
A man that has joined that hurts my soul the most is RFK. When I first looked into RFK, I thought he was amazing. There's a stream where I'm debating non-fon about how it's like...
Really? Wait, when?
This would have been before Kamala was announced as the...
You were supporting RFK.
Yeah, let me hear me out, okay?
Oh my God, I'm not
I can't be here. So, whenever I heard about RFK, I was like, let me look into him, right? And this was a man who defended the NAACP, defended people of color in the, back when they were called people of color, right? Yeah. Defending them in court. He was defending the Apache on their land. He was defending, he was very forward in these social movements, and he was very protective of the environment. He was very protective of groups of minority people. He went against big pharma, big government, big all of these all the time, right?
Interesting.
He fought because of water pipes going through Native American waters that would have put toxic waste into the waters, and he won. He would win these. So I was like, this is a person that seems like he's a man of the people.
Right. Yeah, I think so too. I didn't know that.
And when he was first running, he was running on. The big thing was he wanted to make America healthy again. Now that's what he calls it. But before it was just he wanted to investigate big pharma, he wanted to fix the pricing differences, which I think liberals would agree on. Yeah. The price margins and the healthcare are
I think
horrible.
There was a lot of issues with the FDA and plastics.
He was big on FDA. Corn syrup, seed oils. And he was like, we have obesity and we have chronic illnesses.
Yeah.
And it's like, why do you think we have these? And it's like, this is exclusive to America. And these were good questions to ask.
Yeah.
So on the surface, I was like, he seems like someone that if you put into a position of power could look into these. Yeah. So whenever...
Was it before COVID?
This was right after Joe Biden's dropout.
Okay.
Or well, my opinion of him, not like him doing these things.
Okay.
And I was very upset that the left wasn't giving him a chance. Because if you remember at the time, this is when they wouldn't platform him. They wouldn't have him at the debate, even though he was, if you remember, since the first time since like 1986. Yes, initially.
Okay.
So for the first time since 1986, they didn't use the committee that was always running the presidential debates because they had a rule that if someone was polling above 10%, they had to be included in the debates. And at the time, RFK was polling above 10%.
Interesting.
So they switched just to not have RFK on. So the Democrats didn't want him, and I was like, wow, this is really fucked.
Interesting.
They wouldn't even let him debate. So I talked to Non-Fun about it, and I was like, this is really upsetting me. I told him, I was like, I'm genuinely thinking of voting third-party RFK just to show that this shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah.
And this was before he joined Trump. And then he talked to Kamala's party, and he talked to her campaign. And Kamala wouldn't guarantee him a position in her staff because of things I would later find out. He was very anti-Semitic. He thought COVID was genetically engineered
That's how I came into it. I didn't know all this stuff before. I didn't know all the stuff that he was initially involved in.
His misinformation, and I forgot what country it was, caused 83 people to die of measles. You could look that up. That's a good mic. I thought your key tapping would appear, but if you notice, it doesn't.
Oh, sorry.
No. That's what I just checked. It doesn't matter if it does.
Good.
And I was like, Jesus. Once I heard that, and then do you remember the bear story? I was like, what the fuck? Yeah, it's like, what the fuck is wrong with this dude?
Yeah.
And then it's but then he joined Trump, and it's like, wow. So Kamala, the party you align with, you try to get in, and they wouldn't let you in. So you immediately join the other side. That doesn't seem like a man that's fighting for the people. That doesn't seem like a man that's fighting for the will. That doesn't seem like a man who wants to help people. That seems like a man that wants power. That seems like a man who wants to get into a position that he can do things in.
Yeah.
Which that's politics. I understand that, but I didn't view him as a political person. Because he wasn't running for offices before this.
Yeah.
So I was like, damn, like it's crazy how like a man who seemed like he was so for the people would trade on all of his ideals to join the Republican Party.
You know what he reminds me of? He reminds me of the Rudy Giuliani at the left. That's what he reminds me of.
Oh my God,
he had so much initial populism.
After 9/11, yeah, he was so big.
And then he just goes full
America's
schizo.
mayor,
and
yeah.
then he just goes full schizo, and he goes full conspiracy. Like with Rudy Giuliani, the 2020 election, with RFK, like vaccine denying, autism, vaccines called autism. Like I think he's onto the whole 5G thing with like Wi-Fi radiation and everything. Like he's gone. That was my introduction to him, and so I was full on like, oh, this guy's kind of a lunatic. But I didn't know all this, earlier stuff he was involved in. So I can see that appeal definitely.
Yeah.
But what's crazy is, dude. Now I don't know if he would actually do this, but Trump is saying to put him in charge of the FDA.
Oh, that's a plan.
The CDC, all the health agencies, with this guy who doesn't believe in vaccines, like any vaccines, not just COVID.
Yeah, I talked to one of my friends
I don't
about
know if
this.
he's actually going to do that because Trump will say anything. But regardless, like obviously,
The idea was he was obviously doing it so
just get
endorsement.
his support. Yeah.
Yes, because he was the biggest independent at the time.
Yeah.
And it was a smart political move. As much as I hate it.
Yeah.
I told my friends about this. I was like, I think that it would be good to have some insight into like these food, because like there's a lot of food that are banned in the UK that aren't banned in America, right?
Yeah.
And it would be nice to have some oversight of this. I just don't feel like RFK could ever be the person to have that oversight. I don't think he's intelligent enough, unfortunately. Maybe because of brainworm, maybe because of not. But I don't think he's intelligent enough, unfortunately, to genuinely be able to examine these issues and make a coherent response that could actually help the people.
Yeah.
Like he wants to get rid of. Here's an example. Sorry, he wants to get rid of like the fluoride in the water, and it's the reason that's protected. Dude. Like I don't know if you've ever seen this, but like if you look up a person who drinks exclusively well water, their teeth are fucked. Yeah, there's a reason we have this, and it's like.
And I think there is some legitimacy to too much fluoride can cause developmental issues. But
removal of it.
That's not coming from the fluoride that we're putting into the water. That's coming from like toxic water supply leakage or like toxic fluoride coming in from like factories or just like pollution of the environment. It's not coming into the health the fluoride that we're putting in for health reasons into the water. That's not where that's coming from, and it's so rare too. We monitor that shit. We're not that stuff is happening in a isolated as an isolated circumstance when you do see excessive fluoride causing issues.
It's just that always leads to conspiracy. Do you remember that train derailed? This is completely off. This is kind of on topic. Do you remember when that train derailed in East Palestine and it ended up dumping like chemicals into a lake, and everyone was like conspiracy brain. Like, no way a
Oh.
train could just derail. It's like, it's an isolated. Yeah, it's so weird that when the isolated incident happens
There's
now.
no Occam's razor anymore.
Yeah.
Occam's razor doesn't exist anymore on anywhere.
After, what would it be after? I feel like what was the event?
COVID,
that I think-
maybe?
I've heard COVID. I've heard the Hawaii fires. I've heard.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, I've heard that like after
I
those
feel like
events.
with COVID, it's just like the most crazy conspiracies are latched onto with no evidence, and it's like, okay, we're not even going to consider the most realistic, normal sort of possibility here.
I remember
But it's always sort of existed.
I had an
you know?
anti-vaxxer on, a New York Times bestseller anti-seller. It was my first podcast ever, right?
Damn.
And New York. I thought at the time a New York Times bestseller was like a good credential.
Is it not?
It's like anyone
No,
knows.
okay.
No. But he was telling me like he's an anti-vaxxer. He was a flat. I think he was a flat earther, or maybe he was like agnostic on the shape of the
They all
earth.
sort of blending.
But he was at least intelligent, and he was like, I think it's very difficult for my side that whenever people talk about the vaccines and are against it, they never have the same story. It's like one person will come on and say it's like microchips. Some
Yeah. person
person will come on and say it will kill you. Some person will come on and say it's baby snake eggs. And it's like,
Yeah.
and it's like that doesn't make my side look good at all. And I was telling him about it, and I was like, yeah, it's funny how you can think that and still agree with your side if you can't find like a cognitive like a logically sound argument.
You're trying to engage with him in good faith and like have a sort of.
We could have him on. I might do that. I'll contact him. We could do an episode
God.
where he's on there.
Oh
and we
my
could talk
God,
to him.
I don't know. That might drive me crazy. So were you debating during COVID, the COVID stuff?
I tried not to. I don't think I was. I don't think I was.
Because we didn't know a lot of stuff. It was a lot harder back then. It was a lot harder to have, to do facts.
My
back
first big debate. I'll see when it was. It was pretty recent.
then. We were still learning about it.
I wasn't. I was always. I think every kid was. I always was a YouTuber, right? But
Oh,
like,
really?
I always
Okay.
made YouTube videos. But my
Yeah.
first political video, where it was like not that long ago, unironically, even because I've been political since Joe Biden. But my first political interview was 8 months ago. Would have been my first debate.
Wow.
Which is funny because that's
Which one was that?
that was the one I showed you. That was
Okay.
the one I told you about the
Okay.
dude. His name is a good old Terry Wolf. Here's the thing.
Right. Yeah. I remember you telling me that. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
So it's funny because like I was always debating though. I just wasn't doing public debates. And after doing a few debates, I would call myself pretty. It sounds like ego stroking, but I'm pretty good at talking with people, especially in
Yeah.
debate. I always tell
Yeah.
people, it's like if you ever want to see me dunk on a dude for like 3 hours, watch my Israel and Palestine debate. I
Yeah.
think I destroyed on that one.
Yeah.
I think I'm really good at this. Even here's a really funny clip I can show you of. So I debated this dude called Manar, and after this debate, he hated me. And but this is a clip that I don't know how recent it is. I think it's pretty recent. That came out recently of him react. So he went back and reacted to this debate on stream, and this is what he was saying.
Guys, today we're hosting another debate. It's Isaac. I didn't think I was gonna be seen with Manar again. Bro, Isaac hates me now. No, the problem is, man, Isaac is good. I'm a piece of shit. I'm a piece of shit to Isaac. Isaac was great. He's good, man. He uses all the tactics.
Aw.
I need
So he had like a good opinion, but he does throw in a sneak diss.
Yeah.
I cut it off. He says he uses all the debate tactics I want to use.
Interesting.
Not that my logic is sound. Not that my reasoning.
He's a little bit salty. He's a little bit salty about his performance. It feels
He
like.
was really salty. If I
Yeah.
showed you the messages after, he wanted to argue for like 5 hours
Really?
in DMs.
I
Yeah,
can't.
and at some point I was like, "Hey man, like let's just agree to disagree," which is really funny
Yeah.
for me because I'm very political. I'm never the person to say that.
I'd say so. My experience with debates is I really enjoy good faith conversation with people.
That's
even
difficult.
even if we disagree heavily, like I appreciate really good faith conversation where the other person respects you and the other person values your judgment and won't disrespect you. Anything else drives me fucking crazy. I can't do it. Like the COVID stuff, the MAGA stuff, I can't engage with. Like it stresses me out so much because they're not there to have those conversations.
Yeah, I think-
some of them are. Maybe some of them are. But I think the combination of that lack of good faith and also how those positions are kind of batshit crazy kind of drives me too insane to engage with when it comes to debates. And I think I have had some conversations online with those people, like on social media, and it's given me so much anxiety.
Yeah, I have two
it's not
different
something
ways
can do.
I feel like I debate. I feel like one, it depends on the setting. So if I'm arguing with my father, I'm going to be very good faith, even
Right,
if he's
exactly.
not,
Yeah.
because I know that deep down, one, there's no reason to be bad faith
Yeah.
unless you're talking to an audience, right?
Right.
So with Manar, that was that dude. After a while, I did just try. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna be very combative, very aggressive, very like I'm gonna shove your face in this, and you have to
Yeah.
respond because after a little bit, I was like, well, I know he's never going to change his mind.
Yeah.
So the only person left is his audience.
Yeah.
But with other people, if you think they can change their mind, it is very good to be like, hey,
it's
try
like
to
you're
nurture
talking to the
them.
audience. They are the audience,
It's
right?
I say it like sometimes you have to talk to a Republican like they're 7. Like if they're good faith, you genuinely have to do this. You're like, hey man, like
Yeah, it's
do you
hard.
really think that like Donald Trump is good on this aspect? And it's like, yeah, it's okay. Whenever he went to the economic forum and like he couldn't define like what a tariff is, do you really think he should be the person to implement tariffs and like economic policies in America? And you have to hold their hand. But if I'm arguing with like someone online, I'd be like, you really think that when Donald Trump said 10, 20% or 50% tariffs, do you think he was being actually intelligent when he was saying that? Like this is a person you want to put in all. Yeah, it's very different.
Yeah, I don't know what your feeling is about this. I feel like, in fact, 6 months ago, back in February, back when it was still kind of crazy that Trump was running, there were so many people that I feel like we could have convinced, right? And I feel like now there's no chance. I feel like people have made up their minds, and even if you were to shove Jesus into their face, there wouldn't be any chance. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I don't know if that's true, but that's what it really feels like.
Yeah, that's why I'm always weirded out when I hear about the independents, and I'm like, how the fuck are you an independent?
I've never met anybody at this point that's independent.
And I'm gonna make a very strong claim. I think the people that are independents on the news, I think they just claim to be independent because they want to be on the news.
Well, I'm gonna say I am registered independent. I think it's a good advantage.
There's a difference between registered. I'm saying actually not having an
okay,
opinion.
gotcha,
I'm saying when someone comes on Fox News or CNN after debates and they're like, here's our panel of undecided voters. I don't think you're an undecided voter. I don't think you can be at this point.
Maybe they're just too embarrassed to put their position behind anything. I don't know if that's the case. But I don't even know how to put myself in those shoes because I've never met anybody.
I've never met. Yeah.
I don't know if you can. I don't know if those people, because I would imagine those people probably wouldn't exist so much in the online space, so it would be very hard to find those people. I feel like those people would be very disengaged from politics, so I'm not sure how easy it would be to find those people and talk to them on these platforms.
Especially now, I remember, this is a side story, but I remember it was like, now everything's political. Like now, do you know what Overwatch is?
Yeah.
Do you know how there's Cassidy and McCreed, right?
I've sort of heard
their
characters.
So there's a character named McCreed. He was a cowboy, and they changed his name because the person McCreed was named after did sexual assault and harassment in the Blizzard workspace. So they changed the name to Cassidy. Okay. But some people that don't believe in cancel culture will still call him McCreed to be like edgy or to be quirky or to, you know what I mean? They don't like cancel culture. So even though this person sexually harassed or assaulted someone, I don't care. I'm gonna still call them by the name they're named after.
Yeah.
Even though the name in the game is now Cassidy. So like whenever I played, I didn't know this because I started playing on number 2. Now I didn't play number 1, and I'd be playing. I was like, "Why are you guys calling him McCreed?" They're like, "Do you really care? Do you really?" It's like, really? You think? Do you really care that this like the person is named after did this? It's like I'm just saying their name's Cassidy.
What's it called? Anti-culture? What's the word for that? It's sort of like disagreeing for the sake of argument. What would you call that again?
That would be disagreeing is.
What would you call that? Oh my god, I'm blanking.
I call my brother it all the time, so it's funny that I don't.
Yeah, it's the name for something where you're
disagreeing
you're fighting for the sake of fighting.
Yeah.
Right.
But I remember being like, while you look that up, I remember being like contrarian. Yeah. I remember being like, I'm just wondering why you guys are calling this person a different name. And it's funny how like whenever I say that, you guys automatically assume that I'm like this. I am a liberal, but it's like I'm just asking this because I genuinely didn't know at the time. And it's like I didn't think that
it's coded.
Yeah, exactly. It's like holy shit. It's like if you call McCreed, I know you're a Republican now. If you call it Cassidy, you're either a normal person or a liberal, and that's just the way I assume.
Right.
And it's just
so. I'm actually being called by a socialist right now. I'm not kidding. I don't know why he's calling me. Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay.
But
what were you saying? Sorry.
But yeah, I feel like it seems like now everything's political. I remember I got into an argument with my friend group because I was being very political, which I am.
Interesting. Are they? What would they classify as like?
Just talking about politics in general would be too political for them because we have a group chat and there was a fight over that I was talking about politics and I went back. This is just a side tangent. I went back and it's me and this one friend. I love him. He's a Republican, but I love him. And we went back and he would ask me questions like, and they're like, Isaac, why do you keep talking about politics? And I go back and every message is like, Isaac, do you really think Kamala is this? Or do you really think? And I was like, guys, I'm not starting these conversations. So it's like, yeah, but you're continuing them. It's like, yeah, he's asking me about. I was like, in my group chat with my friends, if someone brings up politics, I'm always going to be responsive to that.
Interesting.
And
right.
And I was like, and I made a point. I was like, and you understand that, like, everything is political now. They're like, not everything's political. I was like, yeah. I was like, if you tell me what your interests are, I can usually define, like, if you're a big fan of, like, I'm trying to think, like, if you work in construction, I can pretty usually assume what you do.
Yeah.
If you play Black Ops all the time, I can make a guess.
If you make racist jokes, or
Yeah,
misogynistic
that
jokes,
easy.
I can
Locked
sort of
on.
guess.
Yeah, if you play 2K, I can kind of usually guess. If you play Madden, I can usually guess.
Is 2K a big?
It's
So 2K and Overwatch, what would you say the big culture is?
those are split usually.
Really?
You can usually tell, yeah. So like if you're playing Overwatch, someone calls him a Creed, that's a Republican. If someone calls him Cassidy, that's a liberal.
Interesting.
That's how it just
Oh my God, that
always
sounds so
is.
complicated.
Yeah, that's just how it is.
I feel like there's coded language in every sort of group like that, right? There's always going to be coded language like that, and it's really hard to, especially if you're a newcomer, it's really hard to kind of find your way through.
I'd put my life on it. Do you know what PGA Tour is?
No.
It's the Golf 2K game. I guarantee. I put my life on that being a Republican winning.
Probably.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Like,
well, I would say this. I would say the same for like UFC or stuff like that.
yeah,
I would
like
say
we're at a
UFC is
point
very
where,
big on
and it's
conservative
not because
culture.
people have made these. It's the chicken or the egg. I don't think it's that people made these political. I think it's the people inside them became political.
Yeah.
Dana
Okay.
White became political.
true.
Joe Rogan became political.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think sexual assault somehow became political because of its connection to cancel culture.
or women or
yeah, it's like
exactly.
it's through the lines of the
Yeah,
like,
that's true. And I feel like that's the case. I feel like a lot of the times it can be, what do those groups attract because of their what do those things inherently attract, and like how would that like what type of people would be attracted to those things, and like in some sort of like what type of bias would those certain activities attract? So like any sort of like physical fighting, maybe like you'd have I don't know, that would attract some sort of conservative audience in that. I don't know.
art would attract a very
Art would
liberal
attract,
audience.
I don't know if I can go into there's probably a big sociological reason why.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if we go into that, but I feel like it can
I
be,
mean-
it can be a combination of that and then also bad actors that can influence those communities.
There's a simple answer, but it's very, very simple, and it's very antagonistic. But I would say that the simple answer is that people in art and people in these, and when I mean art, I don't mean music, because music's very culturally everywhere now. I'm talking about like paintings. I'm talking about that type of art, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about like classical music art.
Yeah.
People who are in these fields usually lean towards like educated people,
Mm-hmm.
and educated people tend to lean towards liberal, and
Yeah.
people who probably watch fights, no offense, are
Right.
probably people who don't really have a very educated background.
And I can imagine it very much appeals to like a very traditional masculinity.
Yeah, exactly. And that always is gonna
which
lead-
is always going to lead towards
Yeah.
conservatism, right? You're going to have all these people who look very traditionally masculine, who do very traditionally masculine things, which by
Nothing
wrong
yeah.
with that inherently. There are a lot of things wrong with certain traditionally masculine things, but that by itself, there are a lot of things that aren't, right? A lot of traditional masculine things that aren't necessarily bad, but it's going to attract those type of people regardless, right? So
Yeah.
you're going to have those biased communities.
Okay, I think we're nearing the mark.
All right.
So,
How do you usually end these things out?
well, now it's its own thing. So I just want to ask. I'll ask you one question. Where do you want this to go? Like, what is? If you had a plan for the podcast, what would you do?
I have no idea. I don't think I could do debates with MAGA. I don't think. I think you have to
rip your hair out by the
yeah,
end?
I would. Yeah, it would actually destroy my mental health. I don't think I could do it. I think I don't know. I feel like it's easy to do. You know, like the anything else stuff. I feel like that's
Bringing
easy
people on.
to do. Whereas you just bring up topic of the week, topic of these sort of subtopics of what's going on. That stuff is good to talk about. You talk about like Twitch. Talk about different sort of environments and different areas of the online space. That's cool, but or bringing people in to for calls. I don't know if there are people who would do that. But
I
I
already
just
have,
don't
like,
think
three
I
lined
just
up.
don't think I could do MAGA debates. And debates, but I can do some debates, but I feel like a lot of those debates, I don't think I could do. Yeah, personally, I just
Can't be there for
Yeah,
those.
I can't. I don't know if I could.
Well, it's probably for the best too, then, because that means if we have people like that on,
Maybe
you
I
can
could
stick to a more
moderate.
moderate rule,
Yeah.
and then I could be very combative, and that would
Yeah.
make it. Because like with two people, then I would be inclined to add two other Republicans on, because it would be rude if it's 1v2, right? It's always a lot more difficult.
right. Have you done those?
I've been outnumbered every night at my dinner table. I'm outnumbered in a debate, so I'm used to being on both sides. I'm used to being in
Right.
the outnumbered and the outnumbered. There was a stream with Manar where he wanted me to talk to someone, and he was there, and I agree with that dude a lot. So after a while, I was like, listen, guys, I'm just going to check out this debate and just moderate. Because I was like,
Yeah.
it's a little rude for me to feel like dogpiling. And it hurts doing that because there's times where someone makes a bad argument on my side.
I bet.
So I remember there's this old debate. It's the Israel-Palestine debate that I was asked to moderate. And at this time, I was very leaning on the Israeli side. I definitely became a lot more moderate, especially with all the shit in Lebanon.
Yeah, exactly.
But at this time, and it was a TikToker named Warrior Insights. He works in the army, and Manar, as you just met.
Okay.
And I was moderating it, and it was so disappointing to listen to because I don't know if he didn't prepare at all, but he wasn't built for the debate environment.
It's hard. That's a hard thing to prepare for, to be honest with you. I don't actually blame someone for doing that.
I think I told him this afterwards. I think he was too good faith. I think he would like.
Oh, interesting.
Because he would let Manar Manar was very combative. He would be like, admit this, and he'd be like, I can't admit this. Can you admit this? And he'd be like, no, admit this. He'd be like, I can't admit this. Will you admit this? So it was the give and take. It was like what you see with Destiny now, where Destiny's like. They're like, can you acknowledge that calling Trump fascist is wrong? He's like, I will never. Like, these are the same people that make fun of Paul Pelosi and call him gay. It's like, I won't acknowledge anything until their side starts admitting it. And
you have to play in bad faith. Maybe not bad faith is the right word.
You have to play the game, is what I say. Triple H style.
Yeah, I don't think I could do that. I'm sorry.
But
so would you say that guy is very combative in that way? That guy you're talking
Manar?
about? Yeah.
Yes, he's very emotionally connected to, I think, his interest. Because his come from religion, so obviously, like, empirically.
What is he? What religion?
Islam. He's a very strong believer in Islam. God. There's a debate. Yeah,
you had Islam debates with him?
Oh yes, you should watch it. There's one where we have it, and in the middle of the debate, I asked him the question because I'm like, let me just see where he's at. Would you rather have? This is an actual question I asked him. Would you rather have rape in a marriage or consensual sex outside of marriage? And he was like, in my worldview, you would want the rape inside of marriage because it's a man is a woman's property, or a woman is man's property, and it's his to do so. And I was like, that is insane.
I feel like those are getting more prevalent. I think those ideologies are getting more prevalent. Not that they weren't prevalent, but in our society, in like Western society, they're becoming bigger.
Muslim like grifting is becoming very big. Sneaker is the big example. Yeah.
And I remember just in the past couple of years, like this is like post-COVID. I feel like pre-COVID. There wasn't much of that.
I wonder, I've thought about this for a while. I genuinely believe this. I think we will see a switch at some point with the Christian side joining the left. Because
you think so?
I believe so.
I mean, it makes sense. Like, Trump,
I think if you're a good faith.
I
think if you're a good faith Christian, not like that one preacher who owns a super mansion, but I think if you are a actual good person and you look at like the scripture, as little or as much as I know about it, like Jesus, there's a really good quote. It's like Jesus, whenever he went up to people, wouldn't ask them their immigration status. People, when he went up to them, wouldn't ask them if they've commit crimes. He wouldn't ask them if they were transgender. Like, he would just help them. And like, you can't champion a side that does the exact opposite. That before you vote wants to ask if you're where you're from, or what you're gonna vote for, or if you're even legal, or if you eat cats. Like, it's not the side of Christianity anymore.
Another Jimmy Carter. We could get another Jimmy Carter president who champions healthy Christian religion.
I'll say healthy Christian, because again, if you believe in it by the book, though, it's going to be hard to join this side, because this side's very pro-LGBT.
Right.
And people in religion, you commonly use religion to attack that side.
Yeah.
But
that would be crazy. That would also, honestly, I feel like that should maybe is happening for some moments, for some parts of the Christian faith. I feel like I've seen that where less extreme Christian.
I mean, that's what happened with like veterans, like with patriotism. Like
exactly.
It went slowly, and then all at once it just dropped.
Now, when it comes to Christian nationalism, which is a whole other thing, sociologically, like that's a lot of stuff combined together, right? That's a whole thing you could delve into. I don't know where that's specifically going to go. I feel like that's very complicated, and there's a lot of things intertwined in that group that you would have to untangle. It's not just one thing. So I'm not sure where that would go. I feel like that's going harder on. That's hard. Those people are supporting Trump harder than ever, so I'm not sure where that's going to go. But man, it would be great if those people, because we have a lot of Christians in this country. Like, can you imagine like how much that support would do for?
Is it still a Christian majority, or is it not? I bet it's not anymore. Is it? And looked it up. Yes. Let's not spread misinformation.
No, you wouldn't want to do that. I feel like it is. Yeah, it is.
Okay, it still is. Rats. No.
Damn. 63%.
But yeah, I think that's the wrap. I think.
Okay. Is there you have doing an outro?
I don't have one. I think the end.
Okay.
Now,